Ever tapped your card at a coffee shop or maybe the grocery store and watched the payment just happen?
Mm-hmm.
It feels almost like magic, doesn't it? That seamless swoosh of digital money.
It absolutely can feel like magic, yeah. But, behind every one of those effortless transactions lies a surprisingly complex web.
Right.
A lot of precise engineering and meticulous configuration.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into exactly that intricate world, point-of-sale systems and card terminals.
Okay.
We're using a real-world example, the EFT Dojo interface from QUORiON Data Systems GmbH, kind of as our lens.
EFT, right? Electronic funds transfer.
Exactly, that digital movement of money. Our mission today is to unpack this specific guide, revealing how a system like this integrates cash registers with card payment terminals.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, really highlight the universal principles that make modern transactions, well, so sophisticated.
And you'll discover how the payment process gets automated, how things like tips are handled, which can be tricky.
Oh, yeah.
And also what happens when things inevitably don't quite go to plan.
Right, the errors.
Yeah, it's a genuine peek behind the curtain of modern payment systems. We'll look at the integration, the configuration, and those crucial, often hidden details that keep your everyday transactions flowing, well, seamlessly.
Okay, so to kick things off then, what exactly is this Dojo interface we're exploring today? What role does it actually play?
Well, at its core, the Dojo interface is a specific integration. It enables QUORiON point of sale, or POS system.
And cash registers?
Essentially, yeah, the cash registers running their KeyMP 2.0 software. It lets them communicate directly and hopefully effortlessly with Dojo Pay-at-Counter card payment terminals.
That sounds like a pretty critical connector. So what are the key benefits for, say, a business owner when their cash register and card machine are integrated like this versus, a more manual setup?
Oh, it's huge. It's really all about efficiency and accuracy.
Okay.
This integration automatically transfers the payment amount from the POS right to the terminal. That eliminates those manual entry errors, which happen. It also provides immediate feedback. Was the payment successful? Was it canceled? Allowing for instant action.
I see.
And beyond just basic sales, it supports vital functions like adding tips, processing cancellations, handling refunds, all with a much more streamlined workflow.
Which specific QUORiON systems are we talking about here? Is this interface for every model they make?
No, this particular guide applies to specific devices,
Mm-hmm.
things like the INViCTUS, the QTouch 9, 11, and 16 models, QTab 9, QUORiON, and also the QMP 6000 models.
Okay.
And specifically with software versions dated October 2, 2024, so it's quite precise.
And how do they actually talk to each other, the connection?
It relies on an internet connection. That's either through a fixed LAN cable plugged in or wirelessly via double LAN to a router.
I imagine a guide like this, being so specific, must have a defined scope. What are some crucial things it doesn't cover? Things someone setting this up would absolutely need to know from elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Its scope is limited.
Mm-hmm.
So while this document details the integration between the QUORiON POS and the Dojo terminal,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't actually provide instructions for configuring the card terminal itself or for setting up the internet connection or the router,
Right.
the basic network stuff.
Right.
For those foundational network and device setups, you typically need to contact your card terminal supplier or maybe an IT technician. It's sort of a clear division of labor in the setup process.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's unpack the initial setup process then. Before any transactions can even start, what's the very first requirement? The absolute must-have to get this Dojo interface running on a QUORiON POS.
Right, the first hurdle. It requires a charged license activation for your QUORiON POS system.
A license.
Yeah, think of it like unlocking a premium feature. Without that specific license, if you try to initiate a card transaction, you'll just immediately see an invalid function error code. EO6 it is, right there on the display.
So there's an actual unlock code involved. That sounds like a decent security measure, but also maybe a bit of a process.
Yeah.
How does a business actually go about activating that license?
It's actually pretty straightforward, done within the POS system's menu. You navigate to Settings, then you find Add-on Activation and select EFT1 Activation.
It's okay.
At that point, the system displays a unique K code.
Code.
Yeah, K code. Think of it like a product key, but specific to your POS system. You take that code, contact your QUORiON specialist dealer, request the corresponding license code using that K code.
Gotcha.
Once you receive that unique unlock code back from them, you simply enter it into the input mask on the POS. You'll see a confirmation message activated, and that signals success.
So once that license is unlocked, the feature is enabled, where do you go next to configure the actual interface settings? Can you do it right there on the POS machine itself?
No, you can't, actually. That's where the QUORiON Software Configurator, QSC, comes into play. Yeah. All the necessary QMP configuration settings for the Dojo interface, they must be made on a PC using this QSC software.
Right.
You can't program these detailed settings directly on the POS system.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, it's likely designed that way to give you more precise control, a clearer overview of all the settings. It avoids cluttering the main POS interface, maybe.
Okay, so it's a multi-step process then. It involves transferring files back and forth between the PC and the POS.
Exactly right. You start the QSC on your PC. You open or load your POS system's current configuration file.
Right.
Make all the necessary adjustments, which we'll get into.
Okay.
Save that modified configuration file, and then you send it back to the POS system. It's a bit like, I don't know, preparing a complex recipe off-site and then sending the instructions to the kitchen.
That's a good analogy. And what about the network side for the terminal itself? Any tips there?
Yeah, for optimal operation, it's highly advisable to assign a fixed IP address to your Dojo terminal.
Why?
Just to ensure a consistently active network connection. You don't want the IP address changing and losing the links. And if you're using Wi-Fi, the terminal must first be properly registered on that network, obviously. And importantly, the Dojo Pay-at-Counter protocol needs to be selected on the terminal itself. That's part of the terminal's own setup.
Got it. Okay, now we move into the actual configuration details within that QSC software. This sounds like where it gets quite intricate. This is where you really start to see how these seemingly simple transactions are built, kind of piece by piece, right?
Absolutely. There are 4 critical areas within the QSC that need adjustment to ensure the Dojo interface operates correctly, efficiently, does everything you need it to do.
4 areas. Okay, let's walk through those. What's the very first step? You mentioned tips earlier. Does that come in here?
Yes, exactly. The first crucial step, particularly if you plan to use the tipping function, is to create a new drawer total.
A drawer total. What exactly is that in POS terms?
Think of a drawer total as like a dedicated ledger entry, or maybe a virtual bucket within your POS system. It's specifically for categorizing certain types of payments or funds.
Okay, like a category.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You'll do this in what QUORiON calls Program Area 2 under Functions, then Drawer Totals. You just click the Add button, and typically you'll name this new function Tip.
Makes sense.
And this total is absolutely vital for correctly storing, tracking, and reporting all those tip amounts, which has significant implications for staff payouts and financial reporting later on.
Right. Very important. Okay, so that's the tip bucket created. What's the next configuration piece once you've got that set up?
Next, you need to tell your POS system that card payments should now be processed via the Dojo terminal. You're linking them up.
Okay.
So still in Program Area 2, you go to Functions, then Tenders.
Tenders, right. Payment types.
Exactly. You select the card payment type. Then in the General Data tab for that tender, you'll choose that tip drawer function you just created from the over tender list.
Ah, connecting the tip bucket.
Yes. And crucially, you also select EFT Terminal 1 from the EFT terminal list.
Ooh.
This directly connects that card tender to the Dojo interface we're setting up. It basically links your virtual card payment button on the POS screen to the physical card terminal.
And that makes perfect sense. You're telling it where the card payment goes and how to handle any extra amount like a tip.
Okay.
Now, how do you define the card terminal itself within the POS system's overall setup? It needs to know about the device, right?
Correctly. The third step involves configuring the card terminal as a distinct device within the POS system settings. It needs to know it exists.
Right.
You go to Program Area 7, which is hardware configuration, then Device Configuration. You add a new device there, selecting EFT terminal as the type.
Okay.
For the connection setting, you choose Network Connection because it's over the network.
Okay.
And you'll typically name the terminal something logical like EFT terminal.
Standard stuff.
Yeah. The standard placeholder IPv4 address or domain is often set to 127.0.1 initially, and the port number is typically 9100. This just sets up the basic communication blueprint for a network EFT device.
Okay, so that's the foundational network setup for the terminal recognized as a device. Now, where do the unique credentials for that specific Dojo device come into play within these settings, the bits that make it your terminal?
Precisely. This is key. Within the EFT settings tab for this newly added device, you'll first select UK Dojo Web as the EFT type. That tells the POS it's talking to a Dojo terminal using their web protocol.
Got it.
You generally keep the response timer at its standard value, which is 300 seconds. That's 5 minutes. Quite long.
Okay.
And here's the critical part. This is where you input your individual Dojo terminal's unique name into the username field and its distinct API key into the user password field.
Ah, the API key.
Yes. These are specific credentials provided by Dojo for your particular terminal. They act like a secure handshake between the POS and that specific terminal. Very important step.
Absolutely. Security first. And what's the final piece of this configuration puzzle then? We've defined the terminal, linked the tender. What's left?
The final step is you need to associate this newly configured EFT terminal device with your specific cash register or POS system, especially if you have multiple registers.
Right, telling which register uses which terminal.
Exactly. So in Program Area 8, which is cash register settings, you select the desired POS system from the table listing your registers. Then in the General Settings tab for that register, you select the name of the card terminal device you just created under Device Configuration, typically EFT terminal, from the EFT1 list.
Okay.
This completes the essential links. It tells that specific cash register which specific card terminal device profile it should be talking to for EFT transactions.
Wow. Okay, so you've gone through all these intricate settings in the QSC, sent the config back to the POS. Now, what does this behind-the-scenes orchestration actually mean for, say, the bustling coffee shop during peak hours? How does that seamless card payment, the one that feels so effortless to the customer, actually unfold step by step for the cashier using this integrated setup?
Well, the good news is for a normal sale, the process is wonderfully streamlined for the operator. It's designed to be simple at the point of use.
That's the goal, right?
Absolutely. You simply ring up the sale on the POS as usual, then press the configured button for the card payment type.
Okay.
The payment amount is automatically instantly transferred to the terminal. No typing needed.
Nice.
The POS system then just waits. It waits for a response from the terminal for that duration specified by the response timer. Well, typically the actual transaction is much faster than the full 60 seconds allowed for the interaction itself. If the payment is successful, card tapped, PIN entered, whatever the transaction is processed, and the sale is immediately finalized on the POS. Done. Receipt prints, drawer opens if needed.
Smooth. But what happens if there's an issue during that process, like the customer's card is declined, or maybe they change their mind halfway through?
Yeah, that happens. So in the event of an error, maybe a timeout because the customer took too long finding their card, or they entered an incorrect PIN, or even a cancellation initiated by the customer at the terminal. The POS system will display a corresponding, usually a quite clear error message, like declined or canceled.
Okay.
Importantly, the sale itself remains open on the POS system. It doesn't just void itself. This gives the operator options right then and there.
Flexibility.
Exactly. They can either restart the card payment attempt, maybe the customer found the right card, or simply close the sale with cash payment or another tender if the customer prefers. It provides that crucial flexibility in real time.
And what about refunds or returns? How does the system handle negative amounts going back to a card?
Refunds are handled just as seamlessly as payments, really. After entering the return booking on the POS, essentially telling the system a negative amount is due back to the customer.
Right, like processing a return.
Yeah. You then press the configured card payment button again. The negative amount is then transferred to the Dojo terminal, and it automatically processes it as a refund back to the customer's original card, assuming it supports that.
Very neat. Okay, we spent some time setting up that special drawer total earlier, specifically for tips. How does the actual tipping process work for the customer at the counter, and how does that drawer total configuration come into play behind the scenes?
Right. This is where it gets really clever and shows the power of the integration. The tip, or gratuity, is added directly at the Dojo terminal by the customer.
Ah, so the cashier doesn't key it in.
Nope. The payment process starts as usual. From the POS cashier hits the card button. Then the prompt for entering a tip appears directly on the card terminal screen itself. The customer sees Add Tip and can enter an amount or percentage or skip it.
I see that all the time.
Exactly. And what's fascinating from the configuration perspective is that both the original payment amount and the tip entered at the terminal are recorded separately back in the cash register.
Ah.
Thanks to that specific drawer total you configured earlier, it knows where to put the tip amount for reporting.
So the POS knows the difference.
Yes. And interestingly, the tip entry feature itself, the prompt appearing on the terminal, that's largely configured on the card reader itself through Dojo settings. The POS setup mainly just needs to know how to receive and report that tip amount correctly using the drawer total.
That's really efficient. The terminal handles the customer interaction for the tip. Okay, so even with perfect configuration and usually smooth processes, we know technology can always have its hiccups, right?
Always.
What are some of the common error messages users might encounter specifically with this Dojo interface? And maybe more importantly, what do they actually mean for the person standing there trying to take a payment?
Yeah, knowing the errors is key. The guide does provide clear explanations for several key error codes, which honestly can save a lot of head scratching when you're in the middle of a busy service.
Definitely.
For instance, if you see an EO6 invalid function message right after hitting the card button, that's almost always a dead giveaway.
The license.
Exactly. It means the EFT1 license isn't activated. The immediate solution, as we discussed way back at the beginning, is to go back through the settings and activate that license using the K code and the activation code.
Okay, pretty straightforward fix for that one. What about that slightly cryptic message? Enter code. What's that all about? Doesn't sound like an error exactly.
Right, it's more of a prompt. That appears if you try to restart the EFT1 activation process after it's already been successfully activated.
Oh, I see.
It's essentially asking if you want to enter a special code, likely provided by support, to deactivate the license. Maybe you're switching providers or something. But if you don't intend to deactivate it, if you just ended up in that menu by accident, you can simply tap anywhere else on the operator display area and the message just closes. No harm done.
Good to know. Then there are the E52 errors. Sounds like a category. Can you break those down?
Yeah, E52 seems to be the prefix for transaction communication issues with the terminal. You might see E52 declined.
Okay. Declined is clear.
Pretty clear,
Oh.
yeah. It means the card payment transaction was declined by the terminal, or rather by the banking network via the terminal.
Yeah.
Could be insufficient funds, expired card, bank security block, lots of reasons.
Right.
Then there's E52 canceled. That usually means the transaction was canceled at the terminal, most likely by the customer pressing the cancel button.
Okay.
In both of those scenarios, declined or canceled, the sale remains open on the POS. So you typically either try the card again, maybe ask the customer if they have another card, or offer an alternative payment method, like cash.
Standard procedure. And what if it's a communication issue itself, like the machines just aren't talking to each other properly?
Right, the network errors. You'll likely see something like E52 COM to PDQ failed. PDQ is just another term for the card terminal.
Ah.
That indicates a communication timeout to the card terminal. Basically, the POS sent the request, but didn't hear back in time. The two devices lost their connection momentarily, perhaps.
Okay.
Or you might see E52 error EFT. This is a bit more general, but it usually means the terminal couldn't be reached at all, often pointing towards an internet communication failure. Maybe the shop's Wi-Fi went down or the terminal lost its connection.
Right, the underlying internet connection.
Exactly. For these network-related E52 errors, the first and most critical step is always check your basics. Check your internet connection, your network cables, your Wi-Fi signal. Is everything plugged in? Is the internet actually working?
Turn it off and on again.
Sometimes. Yeah, check the router, check the terminal's connection status. Once you've verified the network seems okay, try the transaction again. If it still fails, you might need to complete it with cash and investigate the network issue further. It's usually the simplest fix first, though. Check the connections.
That makes a lot of sense. So, stepping back from the specific error codes and settings, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive into the QUORiON Dojo interface? It seems like it's far more than just, connecting two devices with a cable, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Miles beyond that. It truly highlights just how much precise and, frankly, multi-layered configuration is required behind the scenes to make these seemingly simple, everyday transactions happen smoothly and reliably. That delicate balance between the POS system software and the card terminal hardware, and understanding how those detailed settings ensure features like compliant tipping are correctly tracked and processed, it's actually quite impressive when you unpack it.
It really is. It makes you appreciate the why behind each setting in that configuration tool, not just the what you're clicking on.
Exactly. You start to see the logic.
It's like a careful orchestration, isn't it? Of software settings, network connections, licensing, specific device credentials, all ensuring every piece knows exactly how to talk to the other at the right moment. It's like this quiet, invisible dance happening behind the counter every time someone pays.
That's a great way to put it. And what's fascinating here, I think, is how a detailed guide like this one, even though it's for one specific product integration, it really unveils these universal truths about modern payment systems in general.
Yeah.
It shows you the journey of a simple card swipe.
Yeah.
From the initial ring up on the POS to the request hitting the terminal, the interaction with the bank, the response coming back, the tip being recorded separately right through to the final confirmation. And you see all the intelligent design that's meant to prevent hitches along the way.
So perhaps the next time you tap your card at a counter, you might just pause for a second. Consider all those intricate behind-the-scenes configurations we talked about that make that transaction instantly possible. And also think about what happens when even one of those tiny little pieces, one setting or one connection, isn't quite right, leading to those error messages.
Yeah, it gives you a new appreciation for it.
It really does. And it makes you wonder what other everyday technologies that we completely take for granted are built on similar layers of precise, often hidden setup. There must be countless examples.
Oh, absolutely. Everywhere you look, probably.